vision or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hi, this is Jeff Shapiro, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the March 31st issue of the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Reform battle not over. Regional Council moves ahead with the review. Bob Gale may be gone, but Regional Council isn't finished with governance reform. Councilors approved a motion put forth by Fort Erie Mayor Wayne Redekop Thursday that begins with sending Niagara Region Chief Administrative Officer Ron Tripp to meet with his lower-tier colleagues. The CAOs are expected to help initiate a review of Niagara's two-tiered system with an eye toward eliminating duplication and improving service efficiency based on data, a business case with financial analysis, and public consultation commencing this term of council. The motion includes the option to hire outside assistance. Tripp is to report back to council no later than its next regular meeting on April 30th. We know that this is of some importance to the province, and I think we need to take some active steps in the direction that they want us to go. But until such time as we have something from the CAOs, I don't know that there's much for us to go to the public about, Redekop said. I personally have not formulated a plan going forward. I know what the broader strokes might look like, but I haven't made a determination on that yet. The motion also directs regional staff to cooperate fully with local municipalities and share regional data as requested by them and anyone engaged to assist in the government's and services review. That part of the motion may be a nod to rumors of a strong division among CAOs during a previous meeting. Council had recommended approving Redekop's original motion during a committee of the whole meeting on February 26th. During Thursday's meeting, councilors amended it to remove a section that directed then-Chair Gale to refrain from further actions on governance, reform, or possible amalgamations. Gale aggressively pursued restructuring during his brief tenure as chair from December to March after being appointed by the provincial government, and described Niagara's current system of governance as dysfunctional and overloaded with 126 municipal politicians. Gale resigned on March 11th over his ownership of an autographed copy of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, but not before suggesting shrinking the number of municipal councilors by 35, with 16 cuts from lower-tier councils and 19 from the region. Gale's plan included limiting regional council to the 12 mayors, using a weighted voting formula to maintain population-based representation. Multiple sources close to the provincial government said forced amalgamations are off the table, but legislation headed to the legislature in early April would enable the province to determine municipal composition. Changes won't be limited solely to Niagara and could include amendments to the Municipal Elections Act. The announcement is expected to include the change to a mayor's-only regional council in Niagara. One of the sources said the plan needed cabinet approval and is scheduled to be introduced on Thursday. The legislature normally doesn't meet on Fridays, and that date is likely the final sitting before a scheduled 10-day break. The timing of any provincial announcement is key because nominations for the fall municipal elections open on May 1st, the first day that residents can register to run for mayor, municipal council, or for school board trustee. That information aligns with what St. Catharines Mayor Matt Cisco said during his State of the City address on March 25th. I don't think anybody, elected official or not, wants to encounter a situation where May 1st comes and people start to register for an election and then changes happen. I think that's a worst-case scenario. Cisco also said he believes amalgamation is off the table. I think that issue has died, Cisco said. The rumor mill abounds across southern Ontario, and what I've heard most recently is that if there are any changes that come, they will be changes to all the regions as opposed to just one. I could be wrong. It's a rumor mill after all. There are other two-tiered municipalities that could also be on the province's reform radar, including Durham Region, with 8 lower-tier municipalities, including Oshawa, Whitby, and Ajax. Halton Region, with 4 lower-tier municipalities, including Burlington, Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. Waterloo Region, with 7 lower-tier municipalities, including Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. York Region, with 9 lower municipalities, including Markham, Vaughan, and Richmond Hill. Oxford County, which is legally defined as a regional municipality that provides services for 8 local municipalities, including Woodstock, Ingersoll, and Tillsonburg. District Municipality of Muskoka, which provides upper-tier services for 6 low-tier municipalities, including Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, and Huntsville. The province announced in 2023 that it would dissolve Peel Region into Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, but scrapped the plan last year, citing potential tax hikes and disruptions to essential services such as policing and public health. The province also enacted a major boundary adjustment last December, transferring nearly 4,100 acres of land from Springwater and Oro-Medonte townships into the city of Barrie. Port Colborne Council Vance Badaway told Regional Council's successful reform in Niagara depends on a well-supported, evidence-based, and collaborative process, which ensures decisions are well-founded, sustainable, and reflective of the best interests of the communities that we serve. This is about more than a process, Badaway said. It's about public trust, and maintaining that trust requires us to move forward in a way that is transparent, disciplined, and firmly rooted in evidence. Train derailment leaves canal bridge inoperable. Rail cars jump tracks east of Glendale Avenue. Safety board is investigating. Shipping on the Welland Canal came to a stop after 13 railway cars derailed on Monday morning in St. Catharines. The derailment occurred east of Glendale Avenue, resulting in the road being temporarily closed. But Nicole Giroux, manager of media relations and communications for St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation, said the railway bridge below lock number 4 cannot be raised. She said there was no immediate impact to vessels because none were scheduled to go through. She did not know when the bridge could be raised. A spokesperson from Canadian National Railway Company said preliminary reports indicated that several cars derailed in various positions. The official said there were no reported injuries or resulting fires. A social media post by Niagara Regional Police at 10:16 a.m. said that the blockage of Glendale Avenue had since been removed and vehicular traffic resumed. CN said a non-dangerous good called polyethylene spilled from one of the rail cars. The product is used in the manufacturing of household plastics. CN said there is no danger to the public as a result of the spillage. The company said its crews attended the scene with first responders and that the cause of the derailment remains under investigation. CN would like to apologize for the inconveniences caused by this incident, the company said in a statement. St. Catharines Fire Services were called to the scene, but is no longer involved. The derailment also impacted GO train service in Niagara. Metrolink said services were suspended between Confederation and Niagara Falls stations. Niagara-bound Lakeshore West trains were to short-turn to Confederation GO, with Route 12 buses operating between Niagara Falls and Burlington GO stations. Later Monday, Transportation Safety Board of Canada said that it would be deploying a team of investigators to gather information and assess the incident. TBS is an independent agency that investigates air, marine, pipeline, and rail transportation occurrences with an eye toward advancing safety. The board does not assign fault or determine civil or criminal liability. Group's billboard calls for cleanup of former GM site. A group of residents fed up with a lack of progress on the defunct former General Motors property in St. Catharines has taken its message to the street. Coalition for a Better St. Catharines has paid for a billboard on Ontario Street that says, "Don't let contamination define us," and "Clean up the former GM site now." The billboard, which went up Wednesday near Carlton Street, steps away from the brownfield site, is a bold move, said Coalition Director Gwen Kennedy. The location of the sign is definitely meant to be a wake-up call for people who have just driven by on both sides of that toxic site. The timing of our sign is perfect because we feel that it's an election year and people are coming in and making decisions now on the council, people that they feel will be the best to represent them. The property at 282-285 Ontario Street was an industrial site for more than 100 years before General Motors closed its plant in 2010. It sold the property to Bayshore Groups in June of 2014 for $12.5 million. Bayshore sold off equipment and partially demolished the site before stopping work. In November 2019, days before the city was to file a motion in court to take over the property due to unpaid taxes, the mortgage group for the property paid the sum and later told City Council that it would be financing the cleanup. Pits of chemicals were then drained and decommissioned, and piles of debris were removed from the site, but the partially demolished buildings remain. Kennedy said the almost 22-hectare site is widely regarded by residents as a significant ongoing public safety concern. The coalition's billboard depicts a child standing on the property in front of an exposed building. Kennedy said it's a jarring image that the group is hoping will impact people driving by and highlight the safety fears the group has for the site. The Ministry of Environment has said PCBs found leaking from the site in 2020 are no longer an issue after a pond was built to trap storm water on the site and a connection to a municipal stormwater sewer was terminated. A December 2025 report posted on the city's website from MTE Consultants, an independent environmental engineering firm retained by the owners, said the pond was tested 4 times in the spring of 2024 and again in November 2025, and all the results met regulatory criteria. As well, PCBs have not been detected in any of the samples. But Kennedy said that residents remain concerned about contamination and potential leaching, as well as safety risks from the partial buildings, which have had signs of people accusing them. Kennedy said the city's actions to secure the former YMCA building near Fairview Mall and to clean up the former Welland House property should serve as examples. In January, coalition members collected more than 1,200 signatures on a petition calling on council to take decisive and timely actions to enforce vacant building bylaws, to ensure the removal of unsafe and abandoned structures, and apply property standards bylaws to the site. The petition was referred to city staff to come back with a report addressing the concerns listed. Kennedy said she has talked to people who bought properties and homes near the area after Bayshore Group's president Robert Magna announced a plan for a $250 million development when the company first acquired the property. Now, almost 12 years later, those residents are looking at plywood sheets as far as the eye can see. We're just frustrated, and we want to show the people of the neighborhood that we're behind them and we're going to keep fighting, Kennedy said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Hundreds attend a rally outside Penn Center against Premier. Fight Forward protests take place across the province. The signs and concerns were different, but they all had one thing in common: anger at Doug Ford. The Ontario Premier was the common link between several rallies across the province on Saturday, including in front of Niagara Penn Center in St. Catharines. About 200 people gathered along Glendale Avenue on a chilly early spring day to vent their frustrations about health care, education, the environment, and more. It all comes down to Doug, said Anne Marie Zamet, a local theater performer and activist. I've got to give it to him. All of these people came out in -6-degree weather. We're all unified in opposing absolutely everything that this government has done. He has unified us in that respect. More than 30 Fight Forward protests were scheduled across the province on Saturday. The Niagara rally was an extension of recent demonstrations by a Fort Erie group fighting to save that town's urgent care center. Liz Bennion, chair of Biodiversity and Climate Action Niagara, asked to join the gatherings outside the Penn Center, which prompted other groups to show up as well. I reached out to them and said, I'm going to bring the troops, she said. She guessed about a dozen groups showed up on Saturday, enduring snow and frigid wind, to vent their anger at Ford. Her message, whatever you're upset about, come on down. Starting just before 11 a.m., the rally drew honks of approval from drivers as they entered Niagara's largest mall. On repeat were chants of, hey, hey, ho, ho, Doug Ford's got to go. What it's doing is, it's telling people who feel the same way that we do that we can do something, said Branahan. Getting people out to a protest is one thing. It's the public face of what we're doing, but that is not all that we're doing. We have to get to the decision makers. The closer the contact to your decision makers, the more effective it is. You've got to get in their faces. You've got to let them know that we are very, very unhappy with this government in almost every regard. In addition to green belt development decisions and health care concerns, the protests vented against Ontario's government changes to the province's student financial aid system and proposed changes to freedom of information laws. He hasn't taken care of the health care issue. He hasn't taken care of providing housing for people on lower income levels, and he hasn't improved education, said Bennion. Trying to fix that stuff is hard. What's not hard is coming up with all kinds of wild fantasy things like building tunnels under Highway 401. Thorold student, a 2026 Lawrence Scholar. Sugi Abakar demonstrates exemplary leadership. It's a refrain heard often after a major achievement, the modest disbelief of a winner. But for Sugi Abakar, the cliché doesn't make the sentiment any less true. When a teacher at Thorold Secondary School shared a notice for the Wayne Scholars Foundation, the 4-year Leadership and Financial Award draws more than 5,400 applicants across Canada. Abakar approached the opportunity thinking, what do I have to lose? He advanced through the initial interviews and semifinals with the same unassuming resolve. Among video submissions and essays, Abakar spoke about his commitment to building community, co-founding his school's Black Students Association, Muslim Students Association, and Model United Nations Club. I didn't expect myself to make it past that, but somehow I did, said Abakar, who attended the final round of interviews in Toronto. It was honestly the best weekend ever. I got to meet so many amazing kids from all over the country. There were 89 other kids, and all of them had their own unique stories. Just days later, Abakar was selected as a 2026 Lawrence Scholar, one of 36 graduating students who demonstrated exceptional strength of character, a deep commitment to service, and exceptional leadership potential, said the foundation in a release. Valued at more than $100,000, Laureate scholars receive a tuition waiver at one of 25 Canadian university partners, an annual living stipend, one-on-one mentorship, summer work experience, and a community of peers, alumni, and supporters. Abakar moved to Canada at age 11, while his parents remained behind in Chad in North Africa. Living with his younger brother and cousin, there was no way his parents could afford a post-secondary education. I was going to either end up in a bunch of debt or not go to university at all. Getting this scholarship is going to help me a lot, he said. I'm not going to have that financial worry for most of my university career. I'll be able to actually focus on my university studies and be able to participate in clubs. I'm just excited. While the foundation recognizes those with the courage to challenge the status quo and drive meaningful change, Abakar said that his journey began by looking inward and challenging his comfort zone. In his first 2 years of high school, he was introverted, focused strictly on academic work, and did little socialization outside the classroom. He watched his peers quietly from the back of the class before choosing to take one step forward, and after that, the snowball effect. Say hi to someone, and that person might wind up being your best friend one day. Most of the time, we only think about ourselves and see things as if we're the only people experiencing it, or that we're the only one excluded, said Abakar. There's way more people out there that are like you. You have to just go out there and find them. Abakar first applied to be a student trustee candidate, and although he didn't win the election, he said hearing stories from students pushing him to gain more leadership experience. It was through those conversations where he learned about Black and Muslim associations and international debate clubs. When Abakar returned to school, he teamed up with friends and asked a teacher for help bringing their vision to reality. In grade 11, the school launched the Model UN and organized several events, including a basketball tournament and cooking event, events that brought people together. I used to only think about myself, but now I'm thinking more about the people around. How can I make the space around more inclusive and more accessible to other people, he said. Establishing clubs and finding community with shared goals built Abakar's confidence and shaped me into who I am. I'm happy that we created a space for other people to participate, to feel like they belong there. Having those groups where there's people that share their stories, people that went through the same experience with them, it will help them a lot, he said. They'll hopefully get to meet their best friends there. I'm just happy to see that happen. Abakar is debating what comes next, deliberating between attending the University of Toronto or University of British Columbia. Regardless of the campus, his plan is to study international relations and economics with the goal of pursuing a career organizations like the United Nations or African Union. Though his sights are set on the global stage, Abakar said his high school accomplishments are rooted in a circle of friends who are equally dedicated to changing the world. The people you surround yourself with is really important. I can't say that enough. My friends, I'm really happy to have met them. They're the most amazing people, he said. If anyone truly wants to win a scholarship, that's what you should do. Surround yourself with good people, and I'm sure you'll get somewhere. Announcing the 2026 scholars, the foundation said the key to a bright future is empowering values-driven youth ready to embrace the challenge of leaving the world better than they found it. We look beyond marks to identify students with a guiding sense of purpose, those who demonstrate exceptional strength of character, a deep commitment to service, and the potential to lead with integrity, it said in a release. The 36 newest recipients of the Loran Award are exemplary, but it is their values-driven approach to leading and dedication to uplifting their community that unite them as Loran scholars. Murderer sentenced for a role in beating death at Thorold Jail, a 6-year sentence in the 2023 assault case. A 27-year-old man has been sentenced to 6 years behind bars for his role in the beating death of an inmate at Niagara Detention Center. Prisoners do not have the right to impose punishment on other prisoners, Justice James Ramsey said at the sentencing of Eric Smoke in Superior Court of Justice in Welland on Friday. Originally charged with second-degree murder, a jury in March convicted Smoke of the lesser offense of assault causing bodily harm on the basis that there was a reasonable doubt as to whether he contributed to the man's death at the Thorold Jail in June of 2023. Court was told that the 52-year-old victim was first assaulted by 5 men, resulting in severe head trauma. Following the initial attack, a number of other inmates, including Smoke, also assaulted the injured man. This was a brutal and potentially lethal attack on Smoke's part, Ramsey said. He stomped an incapacitated victim's head as he lay dying. Portions of the assaults were captured on a security video. What is particularly disturbing to me is that he seemed to enjoy it and that it was gratuitous, the judge added, referring to a video where Smoke can be seen fist-bumping another inmate after the assault. And the attack was cowardly. There was no chance of resistance or retaliation. Smoke was previously convicted of second-degree murder in relation to the 2020 shooting death of a 27-year-old man on 6 Nations. He was awaiting sentencing on that matter when the man was killed at the detention center. The 6-year sentence imposed Friday will be served concurrently to the life sentence Smoke is serving. The offender is a very dangerous man, Ramsey said. Smoke had stood trial alongside Joshua LeBlanc and Julio Zari Torres. Torres, a 45-year-old resident of Pelham, was acquitted, and Ramsey declared a mistrial in the LeBlanc matter after jurors said they were unable to reach a unanimous verdict. LeBlanc, a 30-year-old Welland resident, remains behind bars. A 20-year-old Welland man was sentenced in February 2025 to just shy of 4.5 years in custody for his role in the death. Jeremy Wells Kennedy had initially been charged with second-degree murder. He pleaded guilty in Ontario Court of Justice in St. Catharines to the lesser offense of manslaughter. 3 men have yet to be tried in relation to the incident. Man who took upskirt video at Penn Center convicted of voyeurism. A Niagara man has been banned from being at Niagara Penn Center and a St. Catharines grocery store after being convicted of using his cell phone to secretly take upskirt videos of unsuspected women. Richard Porter, who's 35 years old, appeared in Welland's Ontario Court of Justice on Wednesday and received a 9-month conditional sentence on 2 charges of voyeurism. This is a significant invasion of those young women's privacy in a public place where they should feel safe and secure to go about their own business comfortably wearing a skirt, Justice Janice Boyd said. On August 24, 2024, court heard Porter surreptitiously took a video under a woman's skirt at a store inside the Penn Center. 10 months later, he was arrested again, this time for taking a video of an employee at a St. Catharines grocery store. The aggravating factors are that while you were on release for a voyeurism offense, you committed the exact same offense, which, unfortunately, shows some concern that you're not deterred by court orders, the judge told Porter. Court was told one victim reported she no longer feels safe when she goes out and has not returned to the shopping mall since the incident. I clearly hurt people. I made the world an unsafe place, Porter told the judge. This is not the type of world I ever want to create. I'm really sorry for what I have done. In a pre-sentence report, Porter denied his behavior was sexually motivated and said that he committed the offenses because he thrives on the excitement of not getting caught in the act. Defense lawyer Jeffrey Hadfield said that his client, who had no prior criminal record, had been living with undiagnosed mental illnesses at the time of the offenses. My client was living under some profound sense of dread and uncertainty, he told the judge. Since his arrest, court was told, Porter has received diagnosis and is receiving treatment. He was also placed on probation for 3 years. You're currently listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The following articles are from the opinion page. Lewis faces an uphill battle. This is from Althea Raj. With the easy part over, newly minted NDP leader Avi Lewis knows that his real challenge is just beginning. He inherits a divided party, a split parliamentary caucus, and provincial wings opposed to his agenda. The Alberta and Saskatchewan parties want nothing to do with him. His party is also broke. It's possible that if a snap election is called, the NDP won't have a campaign plane or TV ads. Lewis has no seat in the House of Commons and no guarantees of obtaining one easily. He also has well-funded opponents capable of spending millions to paint him as an eco-radical socialist waging class warfare. After all, he doesn't just want to keep oil in the ground, he wants to move those workers toward green jobs by phasing in an annual spend of 2% of GDP, about $50 billion, for infrastructure projects such as heat pumps for all, luxurious and affordable high-speed rail, and public support for e-bikes. But over lunch recently in Ottawa, Lewis expressed optimism that Canadians are ready to hear his message. There's a lot of double standards around the ambition on the left versus the ambition on the right, he said. It comes off differently, like when I'm proposing public grocery stores, it's radical. It's going to be too expensive and nobody trusts the government to do anything, he said. But Prime Minister Mark Carney can propose $500 billion of new public spending on defense, and he hasn't had to answer a single question about whether that's radical, whether it's too expensive, or whether it's too ambitious. Lewis smiles. Our proposal is 0.5% of the current defense budget, so I think that there's a massive lack of curiosity about the ideas on the left, and there is an acceptance without questioning of the ideas on the right. Lewis believes that the public has been culturally conditioned to think that government ownership or government services are poor. Social housing is falling apart. The healthcare system is falling apart. People don't have faith in the government to do things, he said. I think we know why that is. Healthcare has been structurally underfunded. Public services serve the interests of the most powerful, political or corporate, Lewis said. Perhaps it's not out of a conspiracy, but a tendency, he added, to see the private sector as the source of all good. It is a big task to restore the capacity of the federal government to do these things, but I hope I get a chance to try one day because I think we need to do what U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt did with the New Deal during the Depression and what we did in the Second World War. He proposes a new generation of public corporations, a network of public grocery stores across the country, such as the U.S. military-run commissary stores with discount goods, a network of public telecom providers to lower bills and break up the monopolies, postal banking to save the post office and service smaller communities, a public pharmaceutical manufacturer to rebuild Canada's public vaccine production capacity, and a housing agency with a public builder to construct 1 million social, co-op, nonprofit, and supportive homes within 5 years. He wants to expand health care to include head-to-toe care, including mental health care. He wants to expand public options for senior and long-term care and double child care spots. He'll pay for it all by taxing the top 1%, taxing inheritance over $5 million, treating capital gains as employment income, as well as ending corporate handouts and fossil fuel subsidies. Lewis's campaign tested his call for a public option for groceries, and he said hundreds of conservatives signed up to find out more. When his campaign called them, they were stunned to discover it was an NDP message. If we can make the case that we can solve people's problems by using the government to actually govern, we'll get the conservatives, he noted confidently. But his first challenge might just be to ensure people don't tune out the messenger before they hear his message. And at that point, he noted, we got some work to do. Ticket resale cap won't lower prices. This is by Timothy DeWurst. Premier Doug Ford recently announced a proposed law to prohibit tickets for live entertainment from being resold above the face value. The Premier early suggested such a law would be forthcoming in response to public outrage over the astounding resale prices of Blue Jays tickets during the World Series last year. Ford said the Ticketmaster was gouging the people, as tickets were listed on its site entirely at resale prices, many going for thousands of dollars, within 30 minutes of being made publicly available. Yet while Ontario sports fans and concert goers can attest to the ticket buying process being broken, the proposed legislation is unlikely to make tickets more affordable. The proposed legislation looks to be focused on capping resale prices and does not appear applicable to the original pricing of tickets. For the Jays game at the Rogers Center this past Saturday, original price tickets in Section 117 exceeded $400. Section 117 is situated near first base, more than 10 rows behind the visiting team's dugout. The seats could be considered good, but they're not exceptional, and they don't include perks such as food and beverage service. For the second game of a lengthy MLB season against the Athletics, who's not a marquee team, it's an astonishing price. Or, if you're looking to buy tickets for the game on April 7th against the Los Angeles Dodgers, you may find an original price seat, also in Section 117, listed at $565.80. The difference from game to game for comparable seats appears to reflect the use of dynamic pricing. Often driven by AI, it's a way of adjusting prices based on changes in ticket demand and supply. As expected, there's high demand among Jays supporters to see the Dodgers play. The matchup represents a repeat of last year's World Series, and it offers baseball fans the chance to see Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman in action. As the supply of available seats correspondingly dwindles, prices will go upward. The use of dynamic pricing, sometimes known as surge pricing, makes the notion of an original price very murky. Ticketmaster also employs a price bundling strategy whereby multiple services are provided for one combined price. The company promotes supposed deals that allow customers to bundle their tickets with a hotel stay. For tickets to see Rush perform at Scotiabank Arena on August 11th, seats classified as a VIP travel package for 2 people were the only ones not listed under verified resale. Still, the package, consisting of 2 mid-floor seats and a one-night stay at Novotel, tallied $5,731.50. It's unclear what proportion of the cost was for the tickets versus the hotel. In the future, Ticketmaster will likely present such VIP packages as tickets with original prices. The price bundling approach is normally meant to simplify customers' purchasing decisions and offer them perceived value, but it's hard to imagine many customers would view such a package as a good deal. Live Nation, Ticketmaster's parent company, has expressed support for the government's proposed legislation. Serving a public relations function, the company has managed to seem like an agreeable corporate citizen while deflecting attention away from its much scrutinized role in profiting off ticket resales. The Ticketmaster ultimately won't be hurt by Ford's legislation, and competition will likely become further limited in a marketplace that's already insufficiently competitive. Evidently, the notion of original prices is dubious. When reselling is no longer permissible, expect them to markedly climb. Timothy DeWurst is a professor and senior research fellow in marketing and public policy at the University of Guelph. Trump is running out of options, by Gwynne Dyer. The Iranians know that they have won, but President Donald Trump doesn't get it yet. He's still at the stage of counting up the U.S. and Israeli airstrikes and assuming that those numbers mean a U.S. victory is possible. But 5 get you 10 that the Iranians are already thinking about nuclear weapons, not their own, which don't exist, the Americas. The current spate of American troop movements will last a little longer, as the 11th and 31st Marine Expeditionary Units and some 82nd Airborne troops, total somewhere between 11 and 12,000 people, arrive in the region, and the planners wait for Trump to decide which way to jump. He may even wait for the other 10,000 soldiers that his people are now talking about to arrive. All this, therefore, could take us down to the end of April. In the United States, with the help of cowed media, Trump can probably persuade a large minority of American voters that some kind of secret peace negotiations with Iran are underway for that long. But not for much longer. The key U.S. political deadline is the midterm elections in November. The only deal the Iranians will discuss is their 5-point peace proposal, a complete end to the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes and the long-distance assassinations, payment of war damages and reparations, recognition of Iran's right to control the Strait of Hormuz, an international guarantee that the U.S. and Israel won't attack them again, and Trump's head on a platter. Okay, I made that last bit up. The president can keep his head, but Iran's other demands are deadly serious, even though there's no chance that Trump would accept them. They don't even mention Iran's nuclear enrichment program in their proposal. What this tells us is that Iran's new leaders just don't care what the Americans do. They believe their control of the Strait of Hormuz beats every card in American hands, and they are probably right. So by late April, early May, Trump will probably have only 3 options, all of them horrible from this point of view. The first choice is a deal with the Iranian regime. They might be ready to talk by then, but the deal would have to be on Iran's terms, control of the strait and an international guarantee that the U.S. and Israel won't attack Iran again, at the least. This would be deeply humiliating for Trump because he couldn't put any lipstick on that pig. Alternatively, he could declare victory and just walk away, but that wouldn't unlock the Strait of Hormuz. America's former allies in the Gulf would have to negotiate that deal themselves from a position of great weakness, and everybody except the less attentive half of MAGA would still know that he had been humiliated. Or Trump could finally put American boots on the ground, hoping that seizing Kar Island or a few bits of coastline around Hormuz would make the Iranians come to the table. However, that probably won't work because U.S. troops couldn't get very far inland because of the mountains, nor could they reopen the strait. There's too few troops. Nevertheless, this option will also appeal to Trump because what he likes best is a single decisive action that makes the problem go away quickly. Boots are exactly that sort of option, in theory, but what if they don't do the job in practice? What's left? Nukes, of course. Only one teeny-weeny, low-yield nuclear weapon, of course, exploded in one of Iran's unpopulated deserts. That should be enough to make the stubborn Iranians come to the table and negotiate their surrender. Trump's people could even claim Iran was 1 week away from getting a nuclear weapon. Again, that has worked lots of times in the past. My wife warned me not to discuss this possibility in public until some diplomat mentioned it first, because I would be called an alarmist. Well, one finally mentioned it, anonymously, and yes, I am alarmed. This is a letter to the editor, Why We Walked, regarding high school walkouts sweep through Niagara as students protest OSAP overhaul. This is on March 12th. I'm a grade 11 student and help organize this student walkout involving students from St. Paul and A.N. Meyer. Students made their way to Fireman's Park, continuing the walk through pouring rain. The turnout showed how strongly students care about protecting access to post-secondary education and the future of OSAP. You're currently listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I could never have been more proud to have organized something like this on St. Paul's End. I grew up in a family where planning for the future meant being mindful with money and thinking ahead. Because of that, I've always felt strongly about issues surrounding fairness, opportunity, and access to education. For many students, programs like OSAP are what make the post-secondary education possible. When we talk about protecting OSAP, we're talking about funding real students with real goals, future doctors, artists, teachers, writers, engineers, lawyers, and so many other diverse careers. We're not studying basket weaving, as the Premier said. Every career is a real one, and every student who wants to pursue that career deserves the same education as everybody else. Without strong funding, doors begin to close before we get the chance to knock. Every student's situation is different, and just because cuts don't affect you doesn't mean you shouldn't fight for the right to education. We're not just walking for ourselves. We walk for the students beside us, for the siblings and friends soon to graduate, and for families who need this support. We're walking out to speak up for students who may feel like higher education is becoming further out of reach. This is from Yves Chevalier in Niagara Falls. Next letter to the editor, bleak situation. Regarding manifesto ownership, distasteful. It is very disheartening to read the vilification directed at former regional chair Bob Gale. He owns a book from a historical event. He owns many historical books and is an eclectic collector. In no way, shape, or form has Mr. Gale ever expressed or followed through on Nazi propaganda. It is an investment of one of the most controversial times of our history. History should not be forgotten. We need to learn from it. Everyone seems to be using this as a tactic for ending a thankless job to which he was appointed. It's very sad and disappointing at the finger-pointing that has gone on. What exactly are we teaching the next political generations? No need to debate or hear another side of a story, or use our ability to discuss like educated human beings? You may not agree, but each of us is different, and we need to be able to live in a civilized society using thinking and rationalized thoughts. A very bleak situation. Good for him for resigning. Who really needs this controversy? This is from Toby Mace in Niagara Falls. Feds, Ontario pool $8.8 billion to cut development fees. Announcement comes on the heels of a promise to waive HST on new builds. The federal and Ontario government said Monday that they will together invest billions of dollars in local infrastructure spending to help cities cut costly development fees and get more homes built. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Doug Ford joined Mayor Olivia Chow in Toronto to unveil a plan for the province and federal government to each spend $4.4 billion on housing-related infrastructure in the province over the next 10 years. The funding deal is the first to be announced through the federal government's $51 billion Build Communities Strong Fund and is meant to help municipalities cut development charges, or DCs, by as much as 50% for the next 3 years. If you don't cut DCs, you aren't getting any money, Ford said in a message to mayors across the province on Monday, but if you do, we will be there to support you. Municipal development charges are fees that are imposed by a city on a developer that usually help to build the infrastructure new housing developments need, such as transit, water, or sewer systems. Experts warn that these fees have ballooned in recent years, inflating the cost of home building and make it harder to build much-needed supply. David Ambrosky, director of the Center for Urban Research and Land Development at Toronto Metropolitan University, said development charges became a convenient way for cities to expand services for their growing populations without irritating residents by increasing property taxes. If you have development charges, it's more of a hidden indirect tax, and to some degree is imposed on people who may not even live in the jurisdiction yet. So politically, it's a safer way to go, he said. Funding will be granted based on a list of projects suggested by a municipality and will be prioritized for high-growth cities where housing shortfalls are most acute. These municipalities will have to commit to cutting development charges by 30 to 50% for 3 years in order to be eligible for money through this stream. Because the funding will be doled out over 10 years, Carney said that these agreements will spread out the burden of paying for infrastructure over time. Ontario also unveiled a plan with the federal government last week to waive the harmonized sale tax on eligible new builds for the next year. Taken together, the federal and Ontario governments estimate that these new agreements will save up to $200,000 in taxes and fees on the cost of a new home. Air Canada CEO announces resignation over criticism. Air Canada Chief Executive Mike Rousseau will leave the company later this year after coming under fire last week for his failure to deliver a video condolence message in French following a plane crash that killed 2 Air Canada Express pilots. Rousseau has told the board that he will step down before October, the airline said on Monday. He is expected to continue to lead Canada's largest carrier and serve on its board of directors until they part ways. The announcement leaves Air Canada scrambling to find a replacement amid the challenge of soaring fuel prices and depressed cross-border travel, and follows a half-decade marked by both COVID-19 hurdles and profit wins under the watch of a CEO known more for his financial finesse than fine-tuned community relations. Rousseau, who's 68 years old, was widely criticized for his lack of French in the 4-minute condolence video posted online that include only 2 words in the language, bonjour and merci. Prime Minister Mark Carney said last week the decision to release the video message only in English showed a lack of judgment and lack of compassion. It is essential that the next CEO of Air Canada is bilingual, he told reporters on Monday. It's the right decision at the right time, he added, qualifying that Rousseau was an effective operator of the airline. Quebec Premier François Legault called the video disrespectful to the airline's employees and its francophone customers. Last Thursday, the Quebec legislature voted overwhelmingly in favor of a motion calling on Rousseau to resign. As recently as last Wednesday, Air Canada told media that he had no plans to do so. Nonetheless, Rousseau apologized for his linguistic shortcomings the next day, stating he was deeply saddened that my inability to speak French has diverted attention from the profound grief of the families and the great resilience of Air Canada's employees. The airline says Rousseau has taken some 350 hours of language courses and spent another 250 hours in practice scenarios to bolster his speaking skills. The 3 Air Canada CEOs who preceded Calin Revensu, Rousseau's bilingual predecessor, all came from the world of U.S. aviation and spoke mainly English. The resignation announcement comes the same day that Air Canada filed documents revealing that the CEO received a $2.8 million bonus for 2025, which was a 43% jump from the previous year that increased his total compensation to $13.1 million, up from $12.4 million in 2024. Despite having launched an external global search for potential CEO candidates in January, the country's largest carrier now finds itself in a hurry to hire a new head, and the pool may be shrunk significantly due to criteria mandating the ability to communicate in French, fluently or otherwise. Massive child welfare deal for First Nations is approved. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has approved a landmark child welfare deal between the federal government and First Nations in Ontario, partially ending a decades-long discrimination case. Monday's decision comes after chiefs twice voted down a national $47.8 billion deal proposed by the federal government to reform the child welfare system, and a tumultuous 2 years of political infighting in the country's most prominent First Nations organization on the way forward. The tribunal said it chose to issue a letter decision ahead of a formal decision to come later, so First Nations in Ontario do not lose a full year of funding under the agreement. It said it reserves the right to make changes to the letter decision after its release. In choosing to work with the Chiefs of Ontario and the Nishnawbe Nation, and in recognizing the rightful authority to make decisions for their own children, Canada is taking an important step toward reversing a history marked by racist, paternalistic, colonial, and assimilationist policies embedded in systemic and racially discriminatory structures, including child and family services, the decision reads. Ontario Regional Chief Abram Benedict said seeing the $8.5 billion deal accepted by the tribunal made the day extraordinary. But let's not forget that there's more work to do, Benedict told a news conference Monday in Ontario. This agreement does not end in 9 years. It is the beginning of an opportunity for all of us together to continue to forge the way forward and reform this program that has done so much wrong to our people for so very long. The decision marks a step toward resolving a dispute that began in 2007 when the Assembly of First Nations and the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society filed a joint human rights complaint about federal child welfare funding. In a ruling on that complaint in 2016, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal concluded that the federal government had discriminated against First Nations children by underfunding the on-reserve child welfare system, and it ordered reforms. In 2024, Chiefs twice voted down the federal government's offer of $47.8 billion to reform the national child welfare system, saying it didn't go far enough to eliminate discrimination. Chiefs in Ontario, whose representatives with Nishnawbe Nation and Chiefs of Ontario took part in the negotiations that led to the $47.8 billion national deal, voted in favor of a separate provincial deal last year that is largely in line with the national deal the Chiefs rejected. You've been listening to reading of articles and features from the March 31st issue of the Niagara Falls Review. We read from the Niagara Falls Review every Sunday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been Jeff Shapiro. Thank you for listening.